Welcome to our fall training of our focus on growth mindset. Welcome to being a KIDSTAGE instructor starting in our fall semester. I would love to just lead off with, everybody introducing themselves, standard behavior, standard operating procedure. If you would just introduce yourself, your pronouns, if that is a practice you engage in, and as our focus today is growth mindset, an example of growth mindset that you have seen or experienced or know of. And if today is the kind of day where, and you may do this in the chat rather than verbally, if that is better for you today. And if this is the sort of day where the brain is dead and there are no new ideas coming in, feel free to use the fable of the crow and the water pitcher, where the crow wants to drink the water, but it's at the bottom of the water pitcher, and the crow keeps bringing pebbles until it raises the level of the water so the crow can drink the water. You can use that example, and I don't care if we hear it 16 more times. That would be just lovely. So, and then hand it off to somebody else in the space. So I'm Janet. I use she, her pronouns. I'm senior education and outreach manager, helping all programs and all locations and our teachers at all times. And an example of growth mindset in my life, everything connects to my knitting, as some of you know. And I have a sweater I've been working on for several months. I put it in timeout over the summer because it was too heavy to have in my lap. But first it was color work and I made it too tight, and so it wasn't going to work. And so I had to rip it back and learn a new technique so that it would be looser. And that worked. And then other things were happening. So I actually cut it in half and ripped back the color work and redid it. And now I'm at the point where I'm ready to join the two halves again. And this is a whole new skill. And I'm excited to be learning it and diving in. And I'm not afraid to rip back again if it doesn't work. And I would like to hand it off to Riona, please.
Hello, my name is Riona. I use she, her pronouns. Riona rhymes with Fiona, if that's helpful. And an example of growth mindset that I thought of, Janet, when you brought up knitting, because I really enjoy to cross stitch. And so it just involves teeny tiny little squares. And so sometimes, my math isn't mathing, and I have to like restitch squares and then unstitch them because they're not matching up, and then restitch them again. Or maybe I start all over again, or maybe I want to change different colors. But I think just considering that is like the whole journey of a piece instead of road obstacles, that helps me engage in a kind of growth mindset, that the goal is still always there, even though if it takes several barriers or different trials to try to get to that goal, it still exists and it is still attainable. So that is something that is helpful for me. And I will pass it to so many people. I will pass it to Haley.
Hello, I'm Haley. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the education programs manager over in Everett. A big thing with growth mindset for me is I've been on a big kick about learning about nutrition and how to fuel your body in a body positive and also just like taking care of yourself way. So that's been a very exciting thing. I'll pass it over to Keikoa.
Hi, I'm Keikoa. I use he, him pronouns. Let's see. I think overall something for me is just kind of embracing your mistakes. Is something that I've been like focusing on in arts wise and just like in life. So I will popcorn it to Marguerite.
Hello, my name is Marguerite. I use she, her pronouns. And something that I've been thinking about a lot with growth mindset is it's not always about showing up perfectly, but showing up. So that's something that I've been thinking about. I'll go ahead and popcorn to Casey.
Hi, my name's Casey. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the Senior Youth Education Manager in Everett. And I Oh my gosh, I think growth mindset is the only mindset to be in because I feel like I'm always learning every day. But recently, I have changed from incline running, walking to the elliptical, and it is frustrating to me at the gym that it is different. So I am in a growth mindset of changing my view of how I approach that activity. And I'm going to pass it to Susie.
Hello, everyone. I'm Susie Bixler, and I am the Director of Youth Education, and I use she, her pronouns. And my growth mindset right now is learning how to let go of the 19 years that I've been living with my son, who is now off at college. And I can't wake him up. I can't do his laundry. I can't help him. I have to let him go. And it is crazy hard, but that is what I'm working on, trusting myself to be able to make that transition soon. And I will pass it to Andrew.
Thank you, Susie. My name is Andrew Long, he, him pronouns. Growth mindset I've actually kind of been taken on as of recently. This might come as a shocker to some of you, but growing outside of theater at this point. So it's looking at what kind of going off of the motto of KIDSTAGE of skills for theater, skills for life, trying to venture outside of what I call my norm, to see, what I'm capable of, what others are capable of, and, bringing new things to the table as life continues on. And I'm going to pass it to Mackenzie.
Thanks, Andrew. My name is Mackenzie. I use she, her pronouns. Been using growth mindset, as Casey says, for all things all the time. It's the only way. But a specific example that's come up for me recently is I'm kind of back in the process of pursuing a Pilates instructor certification, which was something that I had started a while ago, and then it didn't work out for a variety of life reasons, and I'm now getting back into it again. And, I have those moments where I'm like, God, it's going to take so long, and I just want to do it now. And nope, that's okay. Every part, if there are different roadblocks of timing wise in the journey, you can apply everything to this is still going to help me, and I will get there even if it takes me a while. So it's very present right now. And I'm going to pass it to Kate.
Hello, my name is Kate. My pronouns are she, her, and there are many growth mindset things I can think of, but the one that's most recent is figuring out our cat and why he's such a jerk sometimes, noticeably, like Jekyll and Hyde. And then we figured out that it is heat related. So he is very much like his humans in that regard. So we are learning to renegotiate hot, sunny days with a cat who's just had enough of it. Thank you very much. So that is the growth mindset I'm currently working on. Renee.
Hello, my name's Renee. I use she, her pronouns. And I think the growth mindset thing that I've tried to be working on this summertime has been just taking risks and trying things. So I came here because I left the corporate world to come back into theater. So that's a big risk, but hopefully one that will pay off, at least in terms of joy that it brings. And I will pass it off to Julia.
Thanks. I'm Julia. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a former KIDSTAGE teacher, but I'm going to be doing this training today. I'm very excited. Sometimes the hardest part to me of growth mindset is learning how to tolerate the discomfort of failing. And last night, I've been on a journey about baking cakes, and I've been baking really beautiful, awesome cakes, and I'm so happy. And last night we had our friends over for a birthday party, and I made the worst cake. It was such a disaster. It didn't even look like a cake. It was a puddle. I served a puddle with candles on it and was like, I don't know what to say. That's your cake. So I was practicing my ability to tolerate the discomfort of serving someone a puddle. And you know what? It tastes great and it was totally fine. But it's a learning process. I am going to pass it to Rico.
Hi, everybody. Rico the Straps, he, him pronouns. In my car, because my kid is doing a driving lesson right now, which ties into my growth mindset, which has been with someone who's doing driving lessons now and also having a puppy recently, just kind of relearning patience and like what that really means and how like I get so caught up in all the stuff I feel like I need to do to be successful in this world. And then not everything can go that fast all the time. And so I'm kind of like learning to give myself the grace to really slow down when slowdowns are happening and just like let it be and deal with puppy puddles and such. And I will send it to Blair. Did you go yet? Blair.
Hello, everyone. Blair Smith, she, her pronouns. And growth mindset is showing up in my current life by giving myself grace and being kind to my mind and changing the words I use to speak to myself and to speak about my work and the things that I am doing. It's a process, but it is working. So also, I have a sticky note that continually reminds me of this, of working through the meh. Like meh is meh, but we keep going. We're not there yet, but there is a yet in there, the power of yet. So there we go. Anna Maria.
I'm keeping my camera off because I've already had several hours of Zoom today, so my brain's a bit melty. So thank you for letting me have that access need. I'm Ana Maria. My pronouns are she, her, and ella. I would say my growth mindset is right now. I've been doing a lot of food solidarity work, and I've been in the community organizing space a lot this summer, and just finding where that overlaps with theater, and just like, and where we like, and where theater things from theater actually work really well in that space, and vice versa. It's just like reteaching me some of the basics all over again. So like constant lifelong learning in a really wonderful way. I don't know who's left.
Megan?
Megan
and Callie, I think.
I was gonna say Megan or Callie. I don't think. Yeah. Okay.
I can go. Hi, I'm Callie. I use she, her pronouns. I'm very stoked about this topic of growth mindset. For me, lately, I have been I'm very much in a period of change, and I've been working on not judging feelings as they happen or before they happen. So that is my current growth mindset goal. And I'm going to pass it to Megan. Sorry.
I'm Megan, she, her pronouns. And for growth mindset, I've been crocheting a lot of flowers this summer and working on when I make a mistake, instead of ripping it all out, which I have done many times, but learning that flowers aren't all identical in nature. So why are the crochet flowers different? And if you make a mistake, it's okay. Just keep going. So yeah. And then it becomes beautiful in its own way.
I love it. Has everyone had a chance to share? All right. Thank you. Thank you all. I appreciated all of those. It just felt very positive and like I can remember all of these stories and apply them to my life. So thank you for that. That sort of filled my well. We, at KidStage, I think most of you have taught with us before, so I just want to remind you of our community agreement that we use in almost all of our programming. The basics of be kind, be safe, be brave, have fun, applies to everything that we do. It's nicely generic, but it is a great framework. So there may be opportunities to be brave in this space. And I know for my own self, being kind means making space for others to speak. And that is a skill I'm always working on. So think about for a moment how that community agreement applies to yourself for this meeting today. We're going to talk about growth mindset, and most importantly, I want to connect it to the overall goals of KIDSTAGE for the 23-24 KIDSTAGE year. So some of you go back long enough to know that you might have heard the acronym some days of YPQ. And we've been engaged in program quality assessment and improvement for several years, working primarily with an organization called Schools Out Washington, which lots of organizations partner with, including Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, lots of sporting organizations, all kinds of organizations become a part of Schools Out Washington or partner with them. And we work with them to evaluate our own programming, decide, yes, thank you, Susie, youth program quality has been YPQ, and that has been our own slang for many, many years. And Susie and I will definitely fall back into that slang, but most everybody else has come in a more recent time where we're sort of moving it more to just be about making sure our program quality is where we want it to be, that we are focusing on the things that we hold important about our program. And we are using their assessment tool that focuses on social emotional learning, abbreviation SEL. So as an organization, as a group, we decided last year that we would start observing primarily recreational classes and institute classes in February. We did some observations February, early March, and then again, April, early May. And we observed for all the things on their assessment tool for social emotional learning in all programming. We came together, we reviewed our notes, we came to consensus on what we were seeing and not seeing in our classes and what we wanted to focus on for the coming year. And then for summer, we kicked it off because summer was a great place to start with summer camps. And we decided our 3 goals for the year. Sorry, I don't have a PowerPoint. I've just never figured that out for myself. It's a growth place I need to learn. So this is all very verbal. I apologize for that. But our goals for the year are to provide explicit opportunities for students to experience and apply empathy and develop their skills in empathy, to help students connect growth mindset both to skills for theater and skills for life, so that it is a transferable skill, and then also to provide opportunities for peer leadership and peer mentorship. So those are our 3 goals for this year. We decided to take them in digestible chunks. We started in the summer with cultivating empathy. Now, that's not to say that we're leaving that one behind. It continues. It's still our heartbeat. How do we specifically and explicitly help our students cultivate empathy, build on their empathy skills? And we're adding in the growth mindset at the start of the school year because it's perfect timing, especially with the institute program jumping off. We all know ourselves and we know in our students that we have a lot of perfection-minded folks in our midst that, feedback can be hard and haven't yet learned that feedback can be helpful. So this is a great time to really focus on growth mindset. So fortunately, Julia, who has worked with us for so many years, is an expert in this, and I'm so excited to bring her back in and to talk about this. I'm so excited about this. I was going to do a whole introduction, but I noticed that she also has an introduction of herself in her presentation, so I would rather just sort of drum roll and hand it over to Julia.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I'm going to attempt to share my screen, share the right thing, get the audio set up, all the things, which means I might not speak for a moment because otherwise I get overwhelmed. I told Janet before, I was like, I did it successfully once, so that means it's going to be hard for me to do it again. Presenter view. Can you see my slides?
We see your slide and none of the other stuff.
And none of my notes. Fantastic. I am now going to get my chat pulled up in case anyone types in there. Okay, I'm all set. Throughout this presentation, we're going to have lots of time for you to talk to each other in breakout groups and engage like in a whiteboard, but also if there's anything that pops into your mind and you want to type in the chat, I'll keep my chat open just so we have that. So thank you for having me. I'm so thrilled to be here. And today we are going to talk about all things growth mindset. So I am going to start off just telling you a little bit about who I am. Some of you I know really well. Some of you I've never met. So I just want to give you a little insight about me and my KIDSTAGE time as well. We're going to do a little exercise about your hopes for this training. Talk about what is a growth mindset. I think you all have a pretty good baseline knowledge based on your examples, but we're going to just go over it so it's real explicit. Talk about the research, a bit about your brain, this like really silly acronym for a very simple concept, the SFCOHTGGAS. You don't have to memorize that. We'll do a breakout room activity. Then we're going to transition into about teaching growth mindset and implementing it in your classrooms. So we'll start out talking about the Pygmalion effect, developing growth mindset as teaching artists, specifically our language, how we use our language in our classrooms. Breakout room activity, debrief. I'll have some resources that I would love for Janet to send you at the end of this too. And I'll also send you my slides. So if you're like furiously writing things down, don't worry, I will feel free to, but I will also send you my slides. So I am a mental performance coach and consultant, which means that I work with performers, all types of performers, performance teams and organizations on psychological skills. And then I specifically also work on creating cultures that foster creativity and peak performance, but in a sustainable and psychologically safe way. So during the pandemic, I went to grad school. I moved to Scotland. I got a Master of Science in Performance Psychology from the University of Edinburgh. And then I previously had a BA in Anthropology and Music. But pre-pandemic, I was working as a music director, conductor, pianist, vocal coach, teaching artist. I was at Village a lot. I was at KIDSTAGE a lot. And I put up a picture of me conducting Guys and Dolls at Village Theater in 2019, which was the last time I was in one of the Village pits, because after, pandemic, grad school, all the things. But so I think I was so excited when they asked me to do this training because a lot of who I was as a teacher and the skills I developed as a teaching artist, I developed at KIDSTAGE. I so firmly believe in the program that they have built there. And so this just feels like such a full circle moment to me. I also worked all over Seattle at lots of different theaters, but I always did feel like KIDSTAGE was my home. So Janet, if we can open a whiteboard, I just want to set up our expectations, or actually maybe I can open it.
I got it. It's coming.
You got it? Okay.
Now I can see it. Can other people see it?
Maybe if I stop sharing. Oh, I can, okay. Yes, I can see it now too. So I love to do this activity because I think it just puts out in the open our greatest hope for this training, like what you want to get out of this training. For me as a trainer, what your expectations are, your hopes are for yourself, and then for your colleagues. So for me, and with a whiteboard, for those who have not used it before, you can click the text and type, and anyone can type on here. So like for me, I will type this training, like to empower teaching artists. That's my greatest hope for this training. Make sense?
I'm looking at a white screen. Does anyone else just see
So
white?
in the whiteboard, if you can move it around yourself. So if you click it, like I see Janet's on there, Iona, Kakoa, you can grab it and move it. And you should be able to see, it says like my greatest hope for. Can anyone see that? Everyone see that?
I think I'm still looking at a white screen.
So you have to take your mouse and click on the white screen. And because it's a whiteboard, you can move yourself around it. If it doesn't work, we can do it in the chat too.
I just looked for share and put a link in the chat, so I don't know if that helps or not. I know that you might need to scroll over to the left a little bit because that's where the text is on my view.
Saying I need permission to use it.
Let me work on that for you, Anna Maria.
We shall see. If you can see it, will you each just type like your name somewhere on the screen just so I can see? Oh, like I can see people are typing now. Okay. I have a preparing your experience. Okay. It might just not be loading. Okay.
Julia, we've also sometimes used Jamboard, Google Jamboard for something like this. Would you be open to doing that?
Yeah, that's fine. I also whether just maybe the simplest is to do it in the chat. If it's not really loading that well, and people are seeing different versions, let's do it in the chat. Are we okay with that?
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to close this then.
Great. That's totally fine. So what I'm going to say is my greatest hope for the training, the trainer, myself, my colleagues. So my example is like, my greatest hope for the training is to empower teaching artists to use growth mindsets, something like that. It can be expectations, hopes, anything that you're like, oh, I really was hoping to get this out of the training. And while you're doing that, I'm going to reshare my screen. Language and action tools for the classroom. Great. My greatest hope is to find specific language. Okay, definitely have those tools for you. My greatest hope for the training myself is to learn what language to use with students in classes, specifically when I see them using a fixed mindset. Okay, so like how to turn it around. Great. For all of us to be able to use some new tools that will help not only our students, but be useful for ourselves as well. Awesome. Give you another minute just in case anything else comes in. Greatest hope for training, engage with fellow teaching artists and learn from their ideas and experiences. Okay, great. Yeah, we're gonna have a couple time set aside for that. Help students make connections with growth mindset as a practice outside of just theater. Yeah, awesome. To recognize areas where I may be fixed when it comes to how to do things, or especially when it is time to veer from the lesson plan. Great. To learn some of the psychology that goes with the growth mindset and how we can apply it. Yes. And my greatest hope, another one for that. We will get into some brain stuff, promise. My greatest hope is to have new tools to encourage growth mindset outside of feedback and journaling. Great. And then my greatest hope for the training myself is learning how to incorporate all different personalities to somehow come together to create one piece of something. Yes. Okay. Awesome. Toolbox to support. Okay. I'm going to leave it there. That's awesome. I think we have all these things. I have all these things covered, but if for some reason we get to the end and you're like, I want more of this one thing, like, please do let me know. And I'll try and save a little room at the end for that. Can you all still see my screen? Yes. Okay, great. Okay. We're going to just start with some of the basics, right? Which is, what is a growth mindset exactly? And a growth mindset is the belief that we can develop and improve our skills over time, and that we have the capacity to learn and grow. And sometimes it's easy to think about this in contrast with a fixed mindset, which is the belief that our skills are set, that we have what we have, we can't change it, right? So one is, I can get better at something over time. The other is, I have what I have, that's it, can't change it. We see this a lot in the arts with talent, or a gift, things like this. In school, we see it more with things like intelligence, or like, I'm just not good at math and I never will be. I'm not a math person, right? But we see it in the arts a lot of, oh, well, I'm not really a dancer, I'm more of a singer. Things like this. So the growth mindset is really about believing that you can develop your skills. So this concept was first talked about by Dr. Carol Dweck. There's a picture of her. I always like to put pictures of our female psychologists because they're still very outnumbered. But Dr. Carol Dweck was a psychologist from Stanford, and she pioneered research on mindsets starting in the 1970s. And she was really looking at educational psychology and student motivation, and found that those with growth mindsets demonstrated higher levels of persistence, of motivation, and of resilience. She also talked about how mindsets are not an either or situation, right? We all have sometimes a fixed mindset. We all have sometimes a growth mindset. And if you find yourself going down the fixed mindset route, that doesn't mean, oh, I failed, I'm a fixed mindset person, right? It's applying a growth mindset to a growth mindset, I guess, to get meta. But right, it's remembering, intentionally shifting to, okay, let's break this down smaller so that I'm prioritizing my growth and learning. But everyone, I want to just reiterate that, because sometimes we can beat ourselves up about this. Everyone sometimes is fixed about things. Everyone sometimes has a growth mindset about things. That's totally normal. Oh, there we go. So the psychology part of this, I think, is really crucial and is a very important way to talk to your students about growth mindset, because sometimes I think mindsets get classified into the like, oh, it's kind of like woo-woo, touchy-feely things, right? Where it's actually extremely based in science. And one way, just because it's based in science doesn't mean that other other ways of thinking, of doing are bad, but sometimes people try to discredit mindsets by saying they're not scientifically based. That's not true. They very much are. So I like to call neuroplasticity the brain trick, because I think it is the main trick that your brain does, right? With neuroplasticity, neuro just means brain, plasticity means changeable. So it's the study of our brains, and it shows that our brains are constantly adapting and changing. And the brain is made up of many circuits and many pathways. And anytime you do something, you fire a pathway. So if you do something a bunch of times, it keeps firing that pathway, and then the brain reinforces that circuit. And this is how you get better at things. I like to explain it as like digging a tunnel. If the first time you dip your shovel into the ground, that's sort of you firing, right? Like the first circuit, right? And it doesn't feel easy. You don't look at that first shovel full of dirt and think, oh, I've built a tunnel, because you have to keep digging. And you have to do a lot of digging, and maybe eventually your tunnel you can walk through, and then it's getting reinforced, and then maybe you can drive through it, right? But that first shovelful often doesn't really feel like you are building a tunnel. It just feels like you've, I don't know, put your shovel in the dirt. So these pathways, the more you do things, the clearer they get. And I think this is important because it's important for our students to know, and for us to know, that the brain is designed to change as you challenge it, right? It's how we challenge our brains that make those stronger pathways. So it's normal for things to not feel easy, especially in the beginning, but also throughout the process. It's normal for things to not feel easy. That doesn't mean you're not learning. And this is where that mindset kind of becomes rooted in science, right? Because it's like, well, are we really able to get better at just about everything? Well, kind of, yes. Not everything, right? But most things you can get better at. Can you be the best at it? Can you master it? Maybe not, right? Like if I start learning French tomorrow, I'm probably not going to be awesome at French tomorrow, but I might be a tiny bit better. And that's what this is that your brain is changing, and your brain is changeable. This is this silly acronym, but I really like it. I think it's effective, which is the self-fulfilling cycle of how to get good at stuff. And this is how, when you break it down, how a growth mindset actually works. So we have belief at the top there, right? Belief fuels action. Action leads to growth. Growth reinforces belief. So I believe I can learn X, whatever the skill is. When that belief is in place, we're more likely to take action. Those actions that create growth at their most basic form, right, are you need to work hard, you need to make mistakes, you need to try something different, you need to listen to feedback. If we spend enough time putting in the work and taking on challenges, learning from mistakes, using feedback, we're more likely to see some progress. So the most compelling thing going on here is how self-fulfilling this cycle becomes. The belief becomes true. So people operating from a growth mindset believe they can learn, and then they become more likely to learn. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that if you just believe, like, will magically happen and you will be great at everything. But we know that action is the key to growth, right? Period. So our mindsets influence our actions, which impact our capacity to grow. And if we're operating in a fixed mindset, the cycle works differently, right? It starts to break down. So if our belief is, I can't learn X, like, for example, like I'm not a dancer, or I could never do that role, or acting is not my thing, or singing is not, I'm never going to be good at singing. If I start with the belief that I can't get better at it, I'm probably not going to put in much effort. I'm probably not going to stick with a challenge or be open to experimenting or learning from mistakes. I'm probably not going to appreciate or use feedback, which is something Janet brought up, right? If we approach it with, I can't learn this, then when you get feedback from it, it's annoying, it's frustrating, it's hurtful. It's like, yeah, I already know that. You don't need to tell me that. So But if that belief is gone, your action's limited and the cycle falls apart and it becomes self-fulfilling. So that's really the powerful part about a growth mindset, is that your belief in what you can do influences your action, which then influences you getting better, which then leads to more belief, right? So the bottom line with this is mindsets matter because they either encourage action or they stop action before it even starts, right? I have this diagram here. It's small. Let's see if I can zoom in. Yes. So we have this, on one side, we have this fixed mindset, and the other, we have the growth mindset, right? So let's look at the fixed mindset first. And we have this idea that, so here it's intelligence. There's a lot of research about talent, about the idea of talent. And I find that that is really the primary thing that we see in the arts is people think, our artists think, some of our teachers think, I used to think, right? Talent is kind of, you got what you got, that's it. So if we think, okay, with a fixed mindset, let's replace intelligence with talent. Talent is static, meaning it can't change. So that leads to a desire to look smart, therefore a tendency to, or this leads to a desire to look talented, but therefore a tendency to avoid challenges, right? Give up easily. If an obstacle comes your way, it's like, I wasn't born with the skill to do that, so I can't do that. See effort as fruitless or worse. I'll come back to that in a sec. Ignore useful negative feedback or feel threatened by the success of others, right? So as a result, students may plateau early or achieve less, right, than their full potential because they're approaching it with this fixed mindset. I want to go back to effort because sometimes our top performer students also approach it with a fixed mindset. Oh, I'm just naturally really good at this. This is really easy for me. So then they see effort as pointless, right? And it still leads down to the same thing. They might achieve less than they could because perhaps they started at a bit of a higher level and then they think, well, that's all I'll be because that's the level I've achieved. And oftentimes later on in life, this ends up showing up in things like performance anxiety, a hard time coping with setbacks. So it can be just as negative for the high achievers as it is for everyone else. Okay, now we go over to the growth mindset, right? Intelligence can be developed or talent can be developed. This leads to a desire to learn and therefore a tendency to embrace challenges, persist in the face of setbacks, see efforts as the path to mastery, learn from criticism, find lessons and inspiration in the success of others, and as a result, they reach ever higher levels of achievement. So we are going to go into breakout rooms in a moment. And what I would love for us to do, we're doing this activity because this is something you can directly do in your classrooms. So we'll do it together, but you can implement it there as well, which is creating a growth versus fixed mindset poster. So obviously we're on Zoom, we're not live, we don't have poster materials, so you can just have one person in your group write things down, or you can each, but you just want to make 2 columns of some thoughts and actions that someone with a growth mindset may think or do, and how it compares to a fixed mindset. Sometimes it's easier to think of scenarios to help you brainstorm. So here are some examples, right? Like what might a person think if they have a fixed mindset, if they fail a test, or they put a lot of effort into practicing for an audition, but don't ultimately book it, or they don't understand a dance sequence. They're not putting any effort into their class, but are passing. So these are some scenarios to get you thinking. I'm going to show you a couple examples, and then I'll ask if you have questions. Right, so fixed growth, those are your 2 columns. Fixed, I'm just not a natural at this, what's the point? This is so easy, I can do this dance combo without any effort. I can't sing this music. It's too difficult. These are probably all things we've heard 1 million times. At least I've heard them 1 million times, so I'm sure you have too. So fixed, I'm just not a natural at this. What's the point? Growth maybe is I can get better. I just have to keep learning. This is so easy. I can do this dance without any effort. Oh, this dance combo is easy. What else can I learn? What else can I challenge myself with? Or I can't sing this music. It's too difficult. A growth mindset might look like, this is hard for me. I'll ask for help on the best way to practice it. Right? Like reaching out to develop new strategies is an essential part of growth mindset. So, questions about that before we dive into groups? Feel free to just unmute yourself or type them in the chat. Great. I like to leave it a little longer than comfortable because I'm always that late person that's like, oh, at the last second, I do have a question. If something pops up, feel free to ask. I will paste the instructions into the chat once you're in breakout rooms so that you can see them. But I think we'll put you into groups of like 4. Okay, great, Janet. Janet's going to do that. Do you need me to stop sharing to do that? Great.
All right, right now, Julia, you're assigned to a group also, which you don't have to because there's 16 of us in this room, or there's 16 and me. So one of them might be light, and that's because you were supposed to have Julia. Everybody can share screens too. So if somebody is on a computer and wants to actually make a table and has that sort of like mental as well as actual physical bandwidth to do that, go for it. Here we go, opening all the rooms.
And you have about 10 minutes, a little less than 10 minutes or a little less.
I don't know how long it's set for, so we'll see how we do. Otherwise, I'll set a timer outside of Zoom for this. Oh, no, it's set for 5. Don't do that. Let me change the timer. Okay, so it'll be 10 minutes and then we'll do a 1-minute countdown to kick y'all out, okay? All right. Yes, yes, yes. Great, there you go. Have fun. Haley has a question or was saying goodbye? Was saying goodbye. I'm going to pause the recording. Remind me to start it again.
It's always a good sign when people haven't rushed back. Okay, I think we are all back. I would love if 1 or 2 people from each group want to share some examples. You can do so in the chat or you can unmute yourself, whichever feels most comfortable to you. Megan, I want to acknowledge how much I love you recommend leaning into the kids having the answers too. Yes, that's great. That's wonderful. Okay. Casey, good note-taking skills. This is painful, I can't participate versus how can I approach this to gain strength to support myself? When, why will I use this versus how can I use this? I have to versus I get to. I don't want to learn this style of music versus I get to explore the foundation of music to support my singing. I can't versus how can I get there? I love that one. The I can't phrase shuts things down real fast. And encouraging, saying you can't say I can't turns out isn't real effective, right? but modeling, like, how can we get there, right? Talking explicitly about the use of saying, like, when we say we can't do something, then we stop it before we start. But how about we try, how can I try this? How can I get there? Can you help me get there? If you're their teachers, right? That's what you're there for. I'm going to skip down. Hearing no as a roadblock versus no as an opportunity. I hate how I sound versus I should trust my teachers and my peers. I should be positive to myself. Yes. Oh, okay. As a voice coach, I have another thing about I hate how I sound. If we have time at the end, remind me. Okay. Students viewing their peers as support resources partners versus students viewing their peers as competition. I think that's really great. And part of that, right, is the environment and safety we're creating in our classrooms. And the expectations that we're holding students to for supporting each other. When being given a note saying, I know, or deflecting by saying, I was taught another way, versus when being given a note, applying the note and improving, or being willing to try it in a new way if it's something they've been taught before. Yeah. And something I love about note taking in particular too is encouraging students that it's okay to ask follow-up. I know this, not everyone believes this, but I believe this, that it's okay to ask follow-up questions to a note, in the sense of if someone says, oh, I know, I should have done that, or I was taught differently, so that's why I didn't do it, right? That to me isn't constructive. But if someone says, thank you for that note, I'm curious how you could see me applying that more, or I'm curious what you mean by that, feels really different. And giving kids permission to ask questions, I think, during notes can really help foster that growth mindset, because it's also good for you too, right? If you're giving notes, the expectation is I know and you don't know. But if they have the opportunity to ask back questions to you, it's, oh, how can we find a solution together? So I think that's a really awesome opportunity. Lack of empathy, struggling, you're the one, thinking you're the only one who's struggling versus practicing empathy, understanding everyone is in the same place. Yes. There is this wonderful book by a psychologist called Self-Compassion that I highly recommend for everyone in the world to read. And empathy really starts with yourself, right? And so when you think you're the only one who's struggling, it's really hard to be empathetic towards other people. And if you're able to give yourself empathy, it's much easier to extend it to others. Remembering we are in community, not competition. Artistic process is a circle, not a line. I love that. It is truly a circle. I think any way you can demonstrate that, like if we're doing let's come up with growth mindset phrases in our classrooms, anything that you can remember, like the cycle, the circle. We're not trying to get to a destination just to get to the destination. We're trying to be on this journey together. Awesome. These are great. Anything else come up in that exercise that you would like to share, either via the chat or unmuting yourself? Okay, so that is an example of an activity you can do in your classrooms. We are going to move forward into a short video that might play right now. Oh no, okay, good. A short video, but it is about specifically how teachers and people in leadership positions influence their students' mindsets and how that all works. So
we talk a lot about how our mindsets impact our capacity to grow. But how do our mindsets impact the development of the people around us? In searching for this answer, I discovered some research that I think deserves way more attention.
My name is Bob Rosenthal, and I'm a just retired professor of many, many years, 20 years here, 37 years at Harvard before that, 5 years at North Dakota before that.
That's Dr. Robert Rosenthal. He's one of the 100 most cited psychology researchers of all time. He spent most of his career looking at a topic called the Pygmalion effect. He's done so much work in this field that some people actually call it the Rosenthal effect. So I'm sitting in his office, and the first question I ask is the exact one on your mind right now. What's the Pygmalion effect? And he goes, we have to start by talking about a study we did with rats. So he's in charge of this lab that does some research on rats, and one night he sneaks in.
We went into the lab, we hung little signs on cages based on a table of random numbers.
Half of the rats' cages were labeled the smart rats, the other half of the cages were labeled the dumb rats. A group of students comes in and they take care of the rats throughout the week. They feed them and care for them. At the end of the week, they run the rats through the maze, and what they discovered was weird.
And we found, yeah, if you're an experimenter, a human experimenter running rats, and you think your rats are smart, they're going to learn mazes faster than if you thought your rats were dumb.
What in the world is happening here? One thing I forgot to tell you is these rats in this study, they couldn't read. So this wasn't about like their mindsets and attitudes like, oh, I'm a smart rat and that gives me the confidence to run through the maze better. Of course not. But someone in the study could read, and that was the students. What they discovered, the essence of the Pygmalion effect, is it's saying our labels and expectations can become self-fulfilling prophecies. It's exactly what happened. The smart rats actually became smarter. They did run through the maze better, but it wasn't magic. They ran through the maze better because the students treated them differently, and they treated them differently because of the label on their cage. So he writes up this first study and they publish it in a national journal. In the last sentence, he poses a question. If this happens to rats, I wonder what happens to students.
So a couple of weeks after this science journal was published, I get this letter from Lenore Jacobson, who's a school principal in South San Francisco, and she says, if you ever graduate to real kids in real schools, have I got a school for you?
So he has all the teachers and says, I've created a better IQ test. My test is better because I can identify academic bloomers. Maybe not the students with the best grades now, but the ones that will make the most progress this year. So they give all the students this exam, they process the results, and they give the school a list of names. Here are your bloomers, the special ones. Rosenthal returns to the school 1 year later and gives the same students the same exam. And what they found is the bloomers do way better than the other students. In some of the classes, they more than doubled the progress of the students not on the list. So the teachers are amazed. They're like, wow, how do you identify a bloomer? Like, what's the secret to this test? And he goes, I just gave you 20 random names. Now think about that. Just like in the rat study, the students weren't aware of the label, but the teachers were. And when they analyze the data, what they find is, yeah, this label, this expectation becomes true because once again, it changes the way that the teachers treat the students. They would actually treat the bloomers a little bit better. They would create a warmer climate and teach them more challenging material.
That was an important mediating mechanism, is you teach more stuff to those for whom you have higher expectations.
So the label or expectation becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because we make it become true. Now, one thing to keep in mind here is this isn't just 2 studies that show the power of the Pygmalion effect.
All kinds of other studies were done on all kinds of experimental tasks. And as I say, there's over 500 of those studies, and I've meta-analyzed them.
The Pygmalion effect has been studied in prison classrooms, military training programs, and even the corporate world. We found some great work by Christine Ruby Davies from the University of Auckland.
My major interest is in teacher expectations and the ways that they influence student outcomes, the way that teacher expectations influence opportunity to learn.
In one of her earlier studies, she had a bunch of teachers fill out questionnaires on each one of their students, asking at what level do you expect this student to achieve by the end of the year? they were able to take those answers and compare them against where the students currently achieved. This allowed them to analyze sort of the gap between the starting point for the student and where the teacher expected them to end up. With that, they were able to identify two subsets of teachers from the pool. High expectation teachers, where there's a big gap between the starting point and where they expected their class to end up, and low expectation teachers, where there's a small gap between the starting point and where they expected their class to end up. And after a year, they process all the data, and guess what they see?
The kids who were with high expectation teachers made average gains of 2 years academic progress in 1 year, whereas the kids with low expectation teachers on average made slight negative relative gains over the year. So there was a huge contrast in terms of academic outcomes.
Quick question. What if the teachers were just right? What if they had higher expectations for better students?
No, that's not true, because that was one of the things that I found really interesting. There were a couple of experiments done in the States in the 90s where they actually took kids from the bottom group and put them in the top group, and by the end of the year they were achieving at the same levels. So yeah, no, it definitely wasn't about the kids. Kids can make huge gains in a year, in just 1 year, when teachers believe in them.
The Pygmalion effect is probably even more powerful in the real world than the lab. And there's two big reasons for this. First, when they do research like this, they never give a negative label. It's only positive. It's like bloomer or nothing. Now in the rat study they did, because they weren't working with humans, it was smart and dumb. But when they work with humans, it's never a negative label, just positive. But if you think about it, in the real world, we have both positive and negative labels. You are smart, you are dumb, you are a math person, you are not a math person, you are a leader, you're not a leader. So usually we have the negative label, which I think will create even more of a gap. And the other thing is, in this research, they never tell the subject the label. But we do this all the time in the real world. I might believe that you're not a leader, and I'm probably going to tell you that. I might believe that you're not a math person, and I'm going to tell you that. And once we share this negative label or expectation with the subject, it becomes a double-edged sword.
You know, and then they're labeled, well, you're in the low group, you're no good. So kids, I mean, you start at 5, you go through school, by the time you reach 11 or 12, have you got any confidence left? Of course you haven't. Have you got any self-belief left? Of course you haven't. Because why would you want to stay at school with that continual message that you're not good enough?
This is the fixed mindset that we've talked about in a lot of our other videos. If I don't believe I'm a math person, I'm probably not going to practice very much. If I don't believe I'm creative, I'm not going to put myself into those situations. So now the subject, if they believe the limiting expectation, they're going to limit their experiences in practice. And I, as the leader, are going to limit them as well. And we're going to see even more of a gap between the positive labels and the negative labels.
Okay. So that's the Pygmalion effect. It's kind of brutal to listen to. But I think it is such an important piece, especially as people working with students every day, every week, all year. So yeah, my main takeaway from this, right, is our beliefs about others change how we treat them. And when we look at our students as learners and to treat them accordingly, we can have a positive effect on their growth, right? And you see what happens when you don't do that. So how do we develop growth mindsets as teaching artists? Number one, right? Emphasizing the value of learning rather than just focusing on outcomes. It doesn't mean that you can't focus on an outcome, right? But it means that you take equal time emphasizing the value of the path along the way by celebrating progress and effort, right? Like recognizing and rewarding things like hard work and persistence, or, I saw you improve on this one really specific thing, like this tap pattern. I heard that you really improved on that. Or, hey, I heard that this note, like you sounded so much more comfortable there. That's awesome. Really taking time to celebrate those small progressions. Encouraging challenges and embracing them as opportunities for growth and development. Providing constructive feedback, offering specific actionable guidance. I think the specific thing is so crucial, right? Like part of providing constructive feedback is making it specific enough that they can turn it into action, right? And so that puts a little bit of expectation on you as teaching artists too, to know what specifically you need them to do so that they know what to do. And show them, model a growth mindset by demonstrating your commitment to lifelong learning, resilience, adaptability, being vulnerable, telling them this is really challenging for me. I am going to work on this, or like, this has been really hard for me and I got it today. I'm so proud of myself. I think modeling that can be so powerful. So I really like this idea, and I feel like this could be a big takeaway, right? Is labeling students as learners rather than attaching outcomes to their labels. You saw this in the video, and I know just from, working in the world for a long time, that I've done this a million times. You may internally or between colleagues, usually not to a kid's face, but sometimes, right, you have this belief about someone like, well, they're not really a singer, or they're more of a mover, not a dancer. Try shifting that internal label to they're a learner. Instead of they're not a singer, like they're here to learn, they're here to learn and get better at singing. That's what every person in this class is. It takes a internal mindset shift to get used to that. But like, I think it was Blair, you had said you were like really working on your self-talk, right? But I think that was you. I think that is such a important piece, right? Like, how are you talking about the students in your mind? How are you talking to them behind closed doors when they're not around or their parents are not around? Because everything that those thoughts that go through your head, those things that come out of your mouth, all help shape your beliefs, and the kids are impacted by that, whether you're saying it to them or not. I love this piece of language. I borrowed this from a resource that I'm going to share with you at the end, but and adapted it to singing. But I love this as, you may be better at singing than me, but we can both get better at singing if we practice. Or you may be more creative than me, but we can both get more creative if we practice. It's not about reaching a destination of, like, there is even no destination for creativity. That's what makes theater so awesome. But we can all improve on it. It doesn't matter what level you're starting at. And as it said in the video, and it continues, if I let it play for its whole 30 minutes, right? Research has shown that students whose teachers are trained understanding what growth mindsets are and the Pygmalion effect are, experience more growth than those teachers who are not trained, which makes sense, because then you're not imparting your limiting beliefs on the students. So there's one question that I get a lot about growth mindsets, which is, like, what if we just have really high expectations for everyone? Like, what if we just hold everyone accountable to the highest standard possible, no matter what? Then they should all be Lin-Manuel Miranda, right? We aren't all going to be Lin-Manuel Miranda. I don't know if anyone's told you that yet, but I'm here to share that news with you. So when we're setting expectations and giving praise, right? High but appropriate expectations and praise is what we want to aim for. Some people are going to excel more than others in different areas, and that is okay. That is good. That is part of life, right? And trying to pretend that that isn't the case by just setting impossibly high standards for everyone, or praising everyone equally, right? That creates a sort of fake, inauthentic environment that students know You know, they can tell that you're breaking their trust so many times, right? So we want it to be high but appropriate, and it's okay that some people are going to be excelling in other areas and others are going to find different things, right? Instead of saying to someone, so another piece of language, right? Like instead of saying to someone for like, say who dance is not their top skill. I've been using dancing and singing a lot because I think, I don't know, maybe just because I have more experience in it, but I think so much, this can all be applied to acting training too. But instead of saying to someone for whom dance is not their top skill, like, right, you're the best, you did, like, you're so wonderful. When you both know maybe that they're struggling, it's much more effective to say something like, you know, you and I know that dancing might not be your best skill right now, but dancing is a skill and skills are built, and it's going to take some work and it's going to take some practice and some struggle. But if you do the work, you can get better at dancing, and I'm here to help make sure that you do that. Instead of creating this, like, you're the best and then not actually giving them help, right? Sharing this honesty, but treating it as a skill, not as the end all be all of everything. And it's much more effective than just saying you can do this or you can't do this. And it you know, it earns their trust. I also like to point out that in the same vein, saying to someone for whom dancing is their top skill, that it can be equally harmful. If you are saying something like, you're the best at this, you know, you're so talented at that, it puts this massive amount of pressure on them to keep being the best. And it's something I see a lot in adult performers, especially high performers, is that they have been struggling under this expectation that they are the best, and so they have to keep being the best, and they are white knuckling it through because they have the talent that they were born with, and that's it, and everyone thinks it's amazing, and I cannot let that go. And it creates a lot of strife, especially later in life. So I always like to point out, it's this, you know, it's equally a fixed mindset with someone who's like, you know, giving feedback like you are the best or you are so talented at this. The best thing you can do is make it skill-based and make it about something within their control, right? So saying like, I saw how much you improved your piano technique this year. That is so amazing. Like, I see the effort you're putting in, you're doing awesome, versus, wow, you're so good at piano, you're definitely the best pianist here. And then finally, growth mindset. It's important to remember it is about growth and not just effort. That's another thing I see a lot, is that it's like, okay, well then just keep trying and trying and trying and trying and trying. It's definitely not just about effort. It's about, what strategy can I use? How can I ask for help? How can I make a mistake and learn from that? Not just about putting in the same amount of effort every day, doing the same thing. It's also about adaptability and learning new things, right? Okay, we're going to do another breakout room activity. Before we do that, questions, thoughts, reflections from all of that. I know that was kind of a lot. No, okay.
Well, I was, so often we encourage our teaching artists to avoid non-specific praise, just the general, wonderful, good job, awesome, and to be specific. And so it was really validating to hear that is really connected to that growth mindset. And I just wanted to highlight that and echo it again. Like, you are encouraging growth mindset when you give very specific feedback of, I saw you improve in this very specific thing, or I need you to improve on this other very specific thing. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and I think the motivation, the other, you know, the larger motivation research that the psychologist did, and lots of other psychologists have done, is we often say things like, awesome, great job, generic, sometimes not truthful. thinking, oh, it'll motivate them to do better, but it actually does not. It actually is the opposite effect. It's specific praise and feedback that is motivating. It's not generalized, and it's not dishonest. So, you know, obviously you all have been teaching, you know, the appropriateness line. This isn't like you should be giving, you know, horrible feedback to someone, but it's, how can I help you improve something technically or specific that's going to get you to where you want to go? Because that feels like, if you think about it with yourself, that feels so much more supportive. Like when I came in here and I said, what are you hoping to get out of this training? Most people said specific language I can use with my students, because I know how to put that into action. So if you think about giving your students that same feedback, right? Oh, they want something specific that they can do. And that's why it's motivating, because they know how to do it. Janet says, it's a reminder to all of us that we have to be flexible and plan to approach things differently to help students grow. We also have to have a growth mindset applied to our own practice as teachers. Totally. And again, too, this is my plug of just like, it's not going to be one or the other. And that's okay, right? Giving yourself grace and self-compassion of sometimes you're going to be like, I nailed that growth mindset today. And sometimes you're going to be like, I didn't have it in me. That's okay. You're a human being. You are all human beings. We're not aiming for perfection. We're aiming for progress, right? Okay, so breakout rooms. The best way to instill a growth mindset in your students, teach them what it is, treat them as learners, right? We're all here to learn. You can get better, and then model it. So these kind of a 3-tiered breakout room experience. First, I would love for you to take turns explaining a growth mindset to different ages, like 5-year. Like, how would you explain a growth mindset to a 5-year-old? Probably different than a 10 or a 15 or an adult. So you can take turns doing that. I have a growth mindset praise and feedback Google sheet that you can work through. I'll post the link in the chat. I'll post the instructions too. And then I would love, just in the spirit of modeling, for you to have a group discussion of, in the last week, in the last 7-ish days, when have you had a fixed mindset? When have you had a growth mindset? Which mindset worked out and why? I'm going to paste this in the chat. Were you all able to see when I pasted it in the chat when you were in your breakout rooms? No, you weren't. Okay, I'm going to paste it in now.
Kate, we need your cat as a participant in the breakout room, please.
Oops, I just sent it to Janet. Always learning and growing with the Zoomed. Sent it to everyone. Oh, I put the link on there twice. But open up the link, and the first one's easy, right? Explaining growth mindset, 5, 10, 15-year-old. Do the worksheet, and then just talk about last week, fixed mindset, growth mindset, which worked for you. You are going to have a little bit more time. Let's see. I think, Janet, let's do 10 minutes. If you don't get through it all, that is okay. You can take some of these things into your daily life. But we'll give you about 10 minutes, and then we'll come back and do a little share.
Rooms are open.
I could see you all getting kicked out. I'm sorry for cutting you short. Okay, I know that was a lot to get through. If you didn't get through it all, I just encourage you to think about it moving forward. In terms of, so I just want to spend like 5 minutes going over the first one. The second, the Google Sheet, if you had a chance to do that, that's adapted from a this or that sheet that I will make available to all of you. And I like it because it gives you the reason behind why one response is a fixed mindset that's maybe not productive and the other is a growth mindset. So you can look through that in your own time. Hopefully you'll be incentivized now because you're curious. And with the discussion questions, if we have time at the very end, I would love to hear from you all. But explaining growth mindsets to 5-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 15-year-olds, adults, what did we come up with? Chat or unmute yourselves.
With 5 years old, I talked about how like connecting it to learning they're already doing. Like, did you learn the ABCs right away? No, like just having that, and also just acknowledging that they are the experts of themselves. Like, you know, when you want to go to the bathroom, I don't. So you're the expert of yourself and your body, and you trying new things is you just figuring out whether or not what other things you get to be an expert on.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. One of the examples similar to the ABCs I use is like, did you learn how to walk right away when you were a baby? Did you walk? And they're like, no. Like, you have to step and then you fall down, and you step and then you fall down. So that can be another one. Honestly, that can be a good one with adults too. It's like if someone is like, this is a really hard thing for me, it's like, yeah, totally. And we have learned so many hard things through our lives. Like, one of the biggest ones is walking. How did we learn how to do that? We all learned how to stand up and walk. That's wild. So I love using those examples. Great. Thank you. Others.
In our group, we discussed kind of a fable fairy tale storybook approach to it. Blair mentioned The Little Engine That Could, which is a classic example. We're talking about kind of, doing story time of two characters, and one is fixed and one is growth, and who gets to their goal faster, and just kind of breaking it down in a way that they'd be more familiar.
Yeah. Meeting them where they're at. That's great. Other things, maybe for older, maybe for teenagers.
We split that one in two because middle school and high school are very different.
Totally.
I think with middle school, I work a lot with middle school outside of Institute. One thing I talk about often with them is like, your brain is literally changing every day. So you get to end like that's okay. And that's hard. And some days are going to be harder than others. And it's just your brain chemistry. And but the cool thing is this is the time when they're getting to like as your brain chemistry is like rewiring itself and creating new pathways and highways of information, you get to determine how those pathways and highways are run.
Yeah, I love that. And I think talking to them about their brains can be hugely helpful. Kids all think in different ways, and for some of them, that aspect of it really makes it understandable or something they can latch on. That's great. Maybe one more, and then we're going to move on. Okay, we'll move on now. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so my summary, big takeaways here. Individuals who believe their talents can be developed, that's a growth mindset, right? Mindsets exist on a continuum. It is not all or nothing. And I also want to impress this. I think it gets left out. It gets left out a lot. That it's not about, making kids feel guilty or bad or like they're doing something wrong when they don't have a growth mindset. And it's also not about making yourself feel bad when you don't have a growth mindset, right? It's just about nudging your brain in the direction of, could I learn more about that? Or I'm curious. It's a lot about curiosity, right? I'm curious how maybe that didn't work. I wonder what would work. It's nudging yourself towards that, not blaming yourself or shaming yourself or other people about it. Mindsets matter because belief leads to action and action leads to growth. I love that circle. I think it just breaks it down really simply. And then our beliefs about others change how we treat them. And that element of expectations and the language we use and our self-talk and the way that we talk to others and our colleagues, right? And then the best way to instill a growth mindset in your students, right? Teach them about it in an age-appropriate way, in a way that they can connect with, model it in your classrooms, and treat them as learners, you know, not attaching outcomes to the labels that you're labeling them, but everyone is a learner. Everyone is here to learn. Everyone is here to improve their skills, whether it's in a big way or a small way, it doesn't really matter. It's just about the journey of learning. Okay, so there's a couple references, right? This is Carol Dweck's research. One is a book, and then the other is one of the few, unfortunately, articles that's not paywalled. Most scholarly journals are paywalled, which is unfortunate. But there's a couple things there if you're interested in reading. There's other resources. So the Learner Lab is awesome. There's a lot of things referenced from the Learner Lab in this presentation, including that video. It's a great resource for learning about mindsets. The Mindset Kit is a free teaching resource, and so is Mindset Works. These two sites have so much information. They have lesson plans. They have pages of language you can use. They have like creative idea, like creativity exercises. Some of it is for school teaching, so you have to adapt, but some of it isn't. There's so much stuff at both of these websites I was going through. I'm like, wow, they don't even need me. They just have like the entire mindset world at their fingertips. But I specifically, I'm going to send or have Janet send you or put up, I guess there's a shared Google resource. All the references, slides, links to the video, etc. from today will be sent to everyone and will be in the Instructor Lounge Google site. Awesome. So I will send you the Growth Mind Praise and Feedback handout, which is that Google sheet that we adapted. And then there's a growth mindset framing tool. This is specifically for those folks who are like, yes, I want more language. I need more language. This breaks down scenarios in classrooms and gives you language to use in each scenario. It's many pages long. It's extremely helpful. And Mindset Works is Carol Dweck was one of the founders of it, so it's coming from her as well. So useful resources, I hope. Okay, to end, I would love to do I used to think, but now I think debrief. And this is just you typing in to the chat if you feel comfortable about something maybe that you used to think, but now I think. Anything that you feel like changed your mind today or were presented with new information, anything of that sort. I will give you a few minutes to do that. Also, if you want to share something but not have your name publicly attached to it, you can directly message it to me and I will not disclose your name and just read it out loud. Okay, I used to think some kids just didn't want to do the thing, but now I think I need to be curious about why and what different approaches might be necessary for them and for me. Yeah, that's great. Something that Janet and I were talking about when you were in breakout rooms was like, what does a fixed mindset show up like in classrooms? Like, what is the behavior that it shows up like? And I think sometimes it's things like avoidance, right? Not wanting to take risks. Sometimes it's being withdrawn. You know, it can be a whole host of things, but I think that avoidance piece is pretty common. Okay, I used to think when a student said, this was easy for me, meant we'd reached a goal and we needed to pivot. But now I think it's an opportunity for a new challenge with the material technique. Oh, I love that. not exactly in the structure of the prompt, no worries, but it is interesting how much it draws awareness to your own reframing vocabulary. Yeah. Yes. So much of the work, right? We want it to be out here, and so much of the work is in here. I better understood how kids can be the product of what their educators think of them, and the impact our attitudes about their abilities, attitudes can have on what they produce in our classes and beyond. Yeah. I think that is a huge piece. And I think, reflecting on yourselves too, like how might that have either helped me or inhibited me or made me go one direction, not the other. It's an interesting reflective practice. I used to think that students who don't participate don't want to be there, but now I think empowering students and providing agency drives participation. Yeah, this is okay. Training number 2. There is a lot of research about how autonomy, which is giving people the chance to make their own decisions about what they want to purchase, empowering them to be autonomous beings, actually drives participation and motivation, because it's a basic psychological need to feel like you have control over your body, your mind, what you're doing. And when we mandate things, it can really undercut that. So yeah, I love that. Empowering students, providing agency. Love that. I used to think that if you gave enough effort, growth would be inevitable. Now I think that growth requires you to also bring attention to it and not just pass through it and move on to the next task or goal. Absolutely. It's not just effort. It's about figuring out which questions to ask, which risks to take, which people to help you. I used to think early mastery didn't count as fixed mindset. Now I understand its limitations in growth and how to counter it. Yeah. I used to think that students gave up at the first sign of difficulty. Now I think that relating it to other difficult projects and understanding what can be transferred will make it more gratifying for the student to do the project. Yeah. Yep. Okay, another one. I used to think improvement had more to do with getting 10,000 hours of practice, but now I think Jen and I were like, how can we figure out how to say this? The FCOHTGGAS is a more successful and empathetic approach. Plus it's fun. Yeah. Yeah, the 10,000 hours of practice, again, another training, comes from research in classical musicians, showing that in order to have mastery, you have to put a lot of time in, and that is a piece of it, but it's kind of gotten reduced just to that. But the actual research says you need a lot of time, and you have to have specific feedback. You have to have the ability to recognize when you're moving towards the goal you want and when you're not. All sorts of other things. So yes. Okay, those are great. Great. Thank you. Last slide, feel free to get in touch with me. I'm doing this sort of work full time now. I still play music and still music direct once in a while. But right now I'm really working full time just with performers and leading trainings like this, doing consulting work. If you want to get in touch for any reason, check out my website. You can email me. I am on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. Any way that you feel comfortable. I would love to hear from anyone and everyone. And also if you have any feedback on the training, I love to get feedback. I'm always trying to get better, employ that growth mindset that I'm training you all on. So thank you. Jana gave me permission that if there are any questions, we can have a couple minutes. So if you have any questions, feel free to unmute or put them in the chat. And if not, I'll let you move on to your next thing, but I'll give it a couple minutes. Thank you. Restful weekend to you as well. Okay, great. If you think of anything after the fact, feel free to reach out. But thanks so much for having me. It's so nice to see your faces. Be back at KIDSTAGE. I miss you all. For those who I haven't met, I'm sure I would have loved working with you just as much as I loved all these other wonderful humans. But thanks for having me.
Thank you, Julia. Yay!
Yay! Have a wonderful rest of your day today, and have a great weekend.
Yeah.
Bye.
So friends, if you are doing recreational Saturday classes, please hold that channel. Hang on. Blair and Haley have some information for you. And if you have joined us from the World of Institute and that is the only place that you are teaching in this fall, you may say goodbye, or you can hang out just for, social. Love you all.
Alrighty, everyone. Welcome. Slash hello slash wonderful mindset reframing notes and growth and all the things. Oh, Andrew's coming back in. A lot of you have indeed taught with KIDSTAGE before, but this is going to be a wonderful reminder. We also have some new things that we're trying to incorporate. If you were not with us this summer, it might be new information to you. And let's just dive right in. Saturday classes are starting on the 23rd, so they are coming up in the next couple weeks here. We are super excited for them. There will be an email going out within the next little bit here about curriculum and also supply lists. Now, for those of you who are unaware, right now we are kind of moving towards a practice of having you send your curriculum into us beforehand. Now, this looks very different on all people. And it is not we're going through your curriculum meticulously and blah, blah, blah. It is not that at all. It is showing us that you have a plan, what's going to be in an ideal situation. We are 100% aware that things change and pivot and all the things, but just knowing where you see the class going, where the learning goals are, how you intend to achieve those, and opening it up for feedback from us and Janet. And if we see that you're trying to build a 8-foot tall Demogorgon, then we'll be like, okay, what supplies do you need for that? And kind of chime in
Looking at
that
you,
way.
Andrew. Not that you've done that.
So we'll kind of work with you in that way. Now, this could be a full-fledged lesson plan with all the everythings, all the bells and whistles, or it can be just bullet points. So whatever feels comfortable for you. If you need help with that, or would like another set of eyes, or would rather just talk it through with us a little bit on any support in any way, please feel free to get a hold of Janet, who's a curriculum writing guru, as well as Haley and myself, whatever support you need in that. We also have some resources available in the Teacher Lounge that have some examples, as well as some activities and games that you can use and bounce ideas off of, and like take all sorts of different things, just resources to help support you in the classroom. Now, that also goes for if there's something that you would like to do, but you don't know how to do it or how to strategically, intentionally place it in the best way or anything like that, let us know and we can open up a random big brain storm session. So that is also an option. Those curriculum, remind me, Haley, is it just for how far in advance are we looking to see curriculum? Because I don't necessarily, if you have the full 10 weeks or the full shabam planned, like that would be wonderful. If you only have two classes planned, I think that's whatever you have is okay as well.
Yeah, I think one for an example, how I might go about it is, here's the goal, or here's kind of the arc of what we want. If we're doing a musical theater class, we're going to learn these 2 songs and this dance. Here's what an example of what a day in class might look like. Just kind of, check in, warm up, music, game, dance, game, happy end of day. Just kind of giving a demonstration of what the flow of the day might look like. And if there's any other projects, a lot of what we are looking for is just, what sheet music do you need printed? Do you need markers, pipe cleaners, all that kind of doodads? And the most mild sort of like content check of, maybe if you're doing, if you're doing half of Spring Awakening uncensored, it's like, okay, maybe let's talk about this for 3rd to 5th grade. But that, you are all very smart and capable people, so that's not exactly something we're concerned about. It's mostly just checking in of like, what the length of the class is, the students you're teaching, you have a goal when you come in, and yeah, we're here to answer questions. We are all nerds and teachers ourselves. So if you want to talk about games and curriculum and learning goals, oh my God, we'll talk your ear off. So yeah, hopefully that gives a little insight of just the very broad stroke thing that we're looking for. If I have gotten bullet points on a post-it, someone takes a picture of and sends it to me, and I say, that's great.
Yeah.
So it does not have to be pretty.
In the spirit of growth mindset, also, I look at these with the, if I feel like, I don't know that we know where we hope this class ends up. And I recognize we may not know before we meet our students where we hope this class ends up. But if anybody needs a reminder of what happens on the last day of a KIDSTAGE session with a sharing for our family and friends, that's about 15 minutes long, we can talk about that. But I look at, like, do we have a sense of what we want this class to do at the end and ways in which we will achieve that, which all can be changed when you are confronted with the actual humans in the room. You can always then go, I'm revising my expectations. I'm going to apply that growth mindset, and I'm going to raise the bar for these humans, or I realize that these humans are going to achieve a bar that's here, and that's a high bar for them, and I'm going to get them there. Those are things I look at, and I always ask questions rather than squash with, don't do that. I just like, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on that? And the examples on the instructor lounge are still dated. And when there are more examples up there, they will be summer camp examples, which is the same but different, as many of you know. But one format I want to just highlight today, 2 formats that I can think of, 3. Okay, 3. Sorry, Haley and Blair. One, I did get a photograph of somebody's journal that they hand wrote it, and it was 2 pages, and it was very outline bullet point, and it was a photograph, and I'm like, that totally qualifies. So that is a great example. Mackenzie Malhotra is very meticulous in her planning and does so through Google Docs, and plans out every not every moment as it used to be, but big chunks, like this chunk is going to be like this, and this chunk is going to be like this. And Marguerite gives a flow of the day, and then at the end of the document details how each individual game or activity goes, which is really, really great when you think about it like a run script for a stage manager. If you got sick and somebody had to sub and got your learning plan and went, how do you play this game? Oh, right, there it is. And Mackenzie also gave us a lovely game encyclopedia that we can copy and paste from, that's on the instructor lounge right now. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. We do ask that those be sent to us before the session starts. So the week of would be wonderful, and we'll send out more details in the email that is to come. In terms of supplies for your first week of class, those would also be due, or if you need something by the first day of printing needs, or something other than just markers and construction paper, anything out of the norm that we don't already usually have in stock, please let us know as soon as possible, but up to a week in advance, so we can go and get those for you. We do ask that each teacher go with their group and do a, at the very beginning of their session, do a tour of the space, just because we're not assuming that every student has been in this building before, as well as we're really kind of ramping up our emergency procedures. So they are making sure that everyone knows where to go in case of an emergency. And if you need a reminder on that, we can, well, in Issaquah, if you are in the main or the first stage, not first stage, Hunt Family Theater, then it would be going out to the grass over by the train station. If you are at the depot, that you're just going to the grass that's right outside the train station. And if you're at main stage, you're just going to the benches that are right outside the bank. And in Everett,
Fountain. That's it. Very easy. Get outside to the plaza if for some reason that is not an option. In the past, we have met in front of Funko, but Fountain. Something that we've been implementing, we started really implementing it this summer, but something we're going to continue is having sort of emergency go folders in all of the classrooms. And Everett, they're red. I'm not sure for Issaquah, also red.
Yes.
They're red folders. They say emergency folder, and they'll be in the classroom. In case of an emergency, snag it on your way out. It'll have that evacuation plan in it, and also a list of students in the class and their family contact information. So in case we have to evacuate, step out, fire, whatever reason you have to leave the building, that's just another safety measure. The staff on the building will also have those lists. So if something happens, we are also a resource to you. But that is just something that is going to be really helpful. Also in that is a roll sheet. For the classroom, we encourage you to take paper roll. So just going through, see who's here, check them off on the box, because if we have to leave, okay, well, we know Brianna wasn't going to be here today, so I'm not panicked looking for her outside the building, in case of an emergency. So that is something that we are looking at, something that we are hoping to do just to make sure everyone's safe and follow all the standards that you would have in a school or at a theater for a performance and all of those other standards.
Yes, and on those notes, there's also a section where it says medical needs and different notes about each student, that should the parents have anything like, they experience this or they're allergic to this, those will be listed. And that is something that you could glance at just as a forewarning and looking into your classroom. Anything that is a little bit of a bigger concern that should need a heads up, we will email you with beforehand, or try to do our best. Sometimes no one puts anything on those medical notes forms, and we don't find out until day one that we need to support this student in a different way. So if that is the case, or if you have any situations inside the classroom where you need a little extra help or want to brainstorm ideas of how to deal with a student differently, or need supplies, or any sort of, I need someone else to help me for a second, that kind of thing, please let us know. In Issaquah, it's usually going to be myself, Lisa, and Janet often on here. And in Everett,
you'll have me all day in case I, have to step out for whatever reason. I am going to be there. Casey will be there most of the time, and Ayana will also be Ayana will also be here mostly at the second half of the day. It's just so as all the staff in the building. So we are all resources to you. If you're teaching in Everett, you probably have my cell phone number. Please feel free to use it, especially during the day. That is just a great, fast way to get a hold of me, because with all the stairs in Everett, sometimes I can't quite hear what's going on downstairs. So that's a good way to just buzz me. Yeah.
Yes, and we are as your kind of site coordinator, all the different things, wearing all the hats. So if you need something printed, if you need help, or a student needs to come out of the classroom or anything like that, please feel free to utilize us as you need. We are other resources for you of outside of the classroom situations. Anything inside the classroom, curriculum and implementation of your activities, all that is you. And anything outside, supplies you may need, or talking to parents and that kind of thing, please feel free to have us take that on. So if you have a behavioral issue that you need to, like, can we email home, or can we talk to the parents, or anything like that? If you would like to be a part of those conversations, yes, we encourage that, to come and talk to the parent with us, since you are the firsthand, you witnessed it in the classroom. But we will take the brunt of that for you, so do not feel the need to do that. We will have those conversations with parents in the kind of new umbrella that KIDSTAGE is putting on in our YPQ goals and our community that we're building. We encourage you all to take part in the check-in, check-out situation. So you don't have to physically be doing anything. It's just being a presence in the lobby, or being a face to say hello to parents, and just be known as one of the teachers, because a lot of times parents do not see who they don't see in the classroom, and they don't see who their student is hanging out with until showcase or sharing or anything like that. So it's a nice little touch to be present and available should they need to, or should you want to share any wins in the classroom that their student has gone or gained, or the growth, whatever, you know what I mean? And Haley kind of touched on this a little bit, but if you are running late or need to be absent for any reason, please, the best way is to, if you know beforehand, please email us. So if you're working in Issaquah, email myself and CC Janet. And if you're working in Everett, Haley and CC Casey. And we will, that's a if you know beforehand. But if you're like, I need to get a hold of y'all right away, I will drop my phone number in the chat.
Something with these, start at the top of the day arrival things. Just want to reiterate that when the expectation being that you are present and ready to teach when the class is starting. If class is at 9:30, we are here and we're ready to start teaching at 9:30. A lot of times, we'll start a couple minutes late to let people trickle in. Traffic happens, life happens. We'll always try to be flexible and understanding about that. But it's just, we owe it to the families and the students who are excited to be here for, even if it's just an hour of the day, to honor their time. Yeah.
Yes. And with that said, as it is like in the hustle and bustle of check-in, we may not be on our emails. So if you try to email us right at the check-in time, that will probably not get visited until later. So the text or a call is the best way to let us know what's going on, or if you need something, or blah, 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 last minute things. When you get there, or when you're leaving, there will be a sign-in sheet for you. This is your how you get paid paper, your time capture. So it's just a daily sign, your signature, sign on the dotted line, and it's just, you were here, you acknowledge the hours and the curriculum and all of those things. Curriculum is paid on a daily, so 0.5 for each day that you're there. And so there'll most likely be 2 little spots for you to sign, the curriculum and also the teaching hours.
Yeah. Parking, I think, is just a really easy thing to touch on. For Saturdays in Everett, there is street parking available. It is timed during the week, during sort of like working hours, which is very tricky. But for Saturdays, it's untimed. There is parking right along the theater, but in case that's not available, because it kind of does tend to fill up over the course of the day, there are a couple paid lots down further down Wetmore past Everett, but there's also a ton more street parking over there. Also, if you during the week are ever looking at metering and all that stuff, they were pretty harsh over the summer. The further down Wetmore, past Everett, past Bucky's, the auto shop on the corner there, it tends to be a lot easier because it's technically residential. But Saturdays is easy peasy.
Yay. Should you have any questions with payroll or anything like that, you can definitely give your questions to us, but Mari would be a great resource, as well as there's information on how to like see your pay stub and that kind of thing there's a link on the teacher lounge. Am I speaking? Yes, there's a link to that on the teacher lounge where you can see all of those details and or email Tally for those. And it has her email as well on there.
Yes, you also, Casey just put his phone number in the chat, shouting that out. Also, you do get sick pay. As employees at Village, you get sick pay. It's 1 hour for every 40 hours worked. If you get sick, please don't be afraid to ask to use it or ask how much you have if you can't see that yourself. If you've earned it, please use it.
And that may be a reason if you're like, oh, I'm not going to be here, or I have to call out, we may ask why. It's not because we're being nosy.
It's because
yes, we're trying to see what we can do for you in those situations. So that is that. Anything else that we have not touched on? Oh, if you have any trouble getting a hold in this kind of beforehand period, getting a hold of your co-teacher at any point. So we do not have all the teachers here at this moment, but should you need any of their contact information or anything like that, please let us know. If you have tried to reach out and you still can't get a hold of them, please let us know if you need any help coordinating that. And now I open it up to you all to see if there's any questions.
Have you sent out information about who our co-teachers are yet?
Not yet.
Okay, amazing. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything.
No worries.
Awesome. Thank you.
Anything else on the logistics of how things will work coming up in a couple Saturdays?
If you think of it later, please feel free to email any of us. We'll answer that as soon as we can. I know a lot of times, I'll end the meeting and be like, oh shoot, I did have a question. So please feel free to reach out.
Wonderful. And you will see, just a reminder that we do indeed have a open door policy, or like open ear policy, for parents to not be in the classroom, but just there is an option for them to listen in. Most parents don't do it. But if you see someone like peeking their eyeballs in or listening outside or anything like that, that is part of our KIDSTAGE policy, as well as Janet and myself and Casey and Haley may sometimes be popping in and sitting down and anything like that. We're not staring and judging or anything like that. It's just seeing if you need anything, supporting you as we can. So just expect us to be a presence, popping in and out and all the things.
And I'll try to always reach out ahead of time before I do that to see if there's anything particular you want me looking for. But I might fail in that too.
Right. Wonderful. Well, thank you everyone so much for being here. And look at that. We did good on our timing there. That was pretty good. Thank you for being here, and thank you for continuing to support KIDSTAGE in our journey to empower and inspire these tiny humans. So whatever support you need from us in that, we are on your side 100%. So thank you for being here, and we look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks. Yay!
Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye. Woot woot.
Well done.
And
That was
thank
good,
you.
y'all.
And you can, oh, we're still recording.
Sorry.
Stop
No,
it.
you're fine.